The Silent Terror. The darkness between stars held secrets that most civilizations never lived long enough to discover. For over 10,000 years, the Void Stalkers had moved through that darkness like death itself, silent and inevitable. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, a species that had evolved beyond the need for planets or resources. They lived for one thing alone: the hunt. The Void Stalkers were creatures of terrible beauty, standing nearly 3 meters tall with elongated limbs that moved with liquid grace. Their obsidian skin absorbed light, making them nearly invisible against the vacuum of space. 6 eyes, arranged in pairs down their narrow skulls, could see across multiple spectrums simultaneously, but it was their silence that made them truly terrifying. They had evolved beyond the need for vocal communication, sharing thoughts through bioelectric fields that left no trace for other species to detect. Their ships reflected their nature perfectly, constructed from materials that bent light around them. These vessels could drift undetected through solar systems for decades. The Stalkers would study their prey, learning every detail of their technology, culture, and weaknesses before striking. They took pride in their methodology, viewing each successful hunt as an art form passed down through generations. The selection process for new prey followed ancient traditions. Elder Stalkers would gather in the deep void between galaxies, sharing memories of past hunts through their neural networks. They sought species that offered the perfect balance of challenge and vulnerability. Too primitive, and the hunt lacked sport. Too advanced, and the risk became unacceptable. The prey had to have enough technology to mount some resistance, enough intelligence to understand their fate, but not enough of either to pose a real threat. When their long-range scouts detected the electromagnetic signatures coming from a small blue world in an unremarkable star system, the elders took notice. The planet showed signs of a young technological civilization, one that had barely begun to explore beyond their own atmosphere. Perfect hunting stock. Commander Vexhai led the scouting mission to Earth. Through their ship's advanced sensors, they observed the humans with growing amusement. These creatures had divided themselves into hundreds of competing factions, spending more energy fighting each other than exploring the cosmos. Their technology was laughably primitive, their weapons crude chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They had managed a few clumsy expeditions to their nearest celestial neighbor, but showed no signs of faster-than-light travel or even basic energy shielding. The reconnaissance took 3 full Earth years. The Stalkers mapped every major population center, cataloged human military capabilities, and identified key communication networks. They were thorough as always, but their conclusion remained unchanged. Humans were ideal prey, numerous enough to provide extended sport, intelligent enough to suffer properly, but too divided and primitive to mount meaningful resistance. The first strikes came without warning on a Tuesday morning in March. Remote settlements across 6 continents simply vanished, not destroyed, not abandoned, but erased as if they had never existed. Satellite imagery showed empty fields where towns had stood just hours before. No debris, no bodies, no explanation. Dr. Sarah Chen was analyzing seismic data at the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center when the pattern first emerged. The disappearances weren't random. Each site showed identical electromagnetic anomalies precisely 47 minutes before vanishing. The signature was unlike anything in their databases, but it was consistent across every incident. Meanwhile, General Marcus Rodriguez was coordinating the military response from NORAD. Every disappeared location had been isolated, difficult to reach, and lightly defended. Whatever was taking these people was intelligent, methodical, and completely beyond human understanding. Traditional radar showed nothing. Satellite networks detected no aircraft. Yet entire communities continued to vanish with clockwork precision. The Void Stalkers savored these early hunts. They would descend on settlements during the human sleep cycle, using gravity nets to silently collect their prey. The humans were transported to holding facilities aboard the Stalker ships, where they could be studied and eventually released for proper hunting on carefully prepared worlds. It was an ancient ritual, performed with the same reverence their ancestors had shown when hunting the crystal cities of Andromeda or the hive minds of the Magellanic Clouds. But something unexpected began happening. The human governments, instead of fragmenting further under pressure, started working together. General Rodriguez found himself in secure video conferences with military leaders from nations that had been enemies just weeks before. Dr. Chen's research was being shared instantly with scientists across the globe. The threat from beyond their world was forcing humanity to do something they had never done before: truly unite. The breakthrough came when a stalker hunting party made their first mistake. A remote research station in Antarctica had been selected for collection, but a sudden blizzard delayed their approach by several hours. When they finally arrived, the humans had already detected the electromagnetic signature and evacuated most of the personnel. Only 3 researchers remained, hidden in an emergency shelter with recording equipment. Dr. James Okafor, Dr. Lisa Martinez, and engineer Tom Bradley became the first humans to witness a void stalker hunt and survive. Their helmet cameras captured everything. The way space itself seemed to bend and twist as the invisible ships descended, the appearance of the tall, dark figures moving with inhuman grace, and most importantly, the moment when their equipment interfered with the stalkers' cloaking technology. The footage was analyzed by every intelligence agency on Earth within hours. The beings were clearly not human, clearly hostile, and clearly using technology far beyond anything humanity possessed. But they were also physical creatures, bound by the same laws of physics that governed human technology. They could be studied, understood, and potentially defeated. President Elena Vasquez called for an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. For the first time in the organization's history, every member nation attended in person. The evidence was undeniable. Earth was under attack by an alien species with capabilities that made human military forces obsolete. Traditional concepts of national defense had become meaningless. The Global Defense Initiative was born in that session. Every nation would contribute resources, technology, and personnel to a unified command structure. Borders meant nothing when the enemy came from the stars. Military bases worldwide were restructured to serve the common defense. Research facilities began sharing data in real time. The greatest minds from every continent were brought together in secure locations to work on humanity's survival. Dr. Chen found herself leading a team of physicists, engineers, and computer scientists tasked with understanding the alien technology. The electromagnetic signatures were their only clue, but they revealed something crucial. The stalkers' cloaking and gravity manipulation systems generated detectable interference patterns. Humanity might not be able to see their attackers directly, but they could learn to track them. General Rodriguez coordinated the development of new detection networks. Arrays of sensors were deployed across every continent, linked by quantum communication systems that couldn't be intercepted or jammed. For the first time since the attacks began, humanity would have advance warning when the stalkers approach. The void stalkers noticed the changes but weren't concerned. Prey species often showed increased coordination when faced with extinction. It was a natural survival response that usually made the final hunt more interesting. They continued their methodical collection of human specimens, preparing for the grand hunt that would come once their prey had been properly cataloged and transported to the prepared hunting grounds. They had no way of knowing that humanity was about to do something no prey species had ever done before, something that would change the nature of the hunt forever and make the stalkers themselves into the hunted. As the first part of this galactic confrontation drew to a close, both species were preparing for what they believed would be the inevitable conclusion. The stalkers saw a primitive species making futile preparations for a battle they could never win. Humanity saw an enemy that could be studied, understood, and ultimately defeated through cooperation and ingenuity. Neither species truly understood what was about to happen when an unstoppable force met an immovable object among the stars. The hunters become the hunted. The war began to change when Dr. Sarah Chen made a discovery that would alter the course of human history. Deep in the electromagnetic data from the stalker encounters, she found something impossible. The aliens' technology wasn't just detectable, it was hackable. The same quantum fields they used for cloaking and gravity manipulation could be disrupted by precisely modulated electromagnetic pulses. Humanity had found a crack in their enemy's armor. Working around the clock in a converted military bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, Shen's international team developed the first prototype disruptor. It was crude, requiring enormous amounts of power and only effective at close range. But when tested against captured stalker technology, the results were extraordinary. Their gravity nets failed, their cloaking systems flickered, and their ships became visible to conventional sensors. The first field test came sooner than expected. A stalker hunting party descended on a small coastal town in Norway, unaware that it had been designated as a testing ground for humanity's new weapons. As their ships moved into position above the evacuated settlement, arrays of disguised disruptors activated simultaneously. For the first time in 10,000 years, void stalker vessels appeared on radar screens, solid and vulnerable. What followed was a coordinated strike that caught the aliens completely off guard. Fighter jets launched from hidden bases struck with conventional missiles guided by quantum targeting systems. Surface-to-air batteries opened fire with rounds specially designed to exploit the brief windows when the stalker ships were visible. The lead vessel, damaged and disoriented, crashed into the North Sea. The wreckage provided humanity with its first real look at stalker technology. The ship's hull was composed of materials that shouldn't have been able to exist according to human physics, yet there they were, twisted and broken on the ocean floor. More importantly, the ship's computer cores were intact, filled with data that would take years to fully decode, but immediately revealed the scope of the threat humanity faced. Commander Vexhai, leading the hunting party, was captured alive in the crash. This presented humanity with an unprecedented opportunity and an enormous risk. The stalker was unlike anything from Earth's evolutionary tree, clearly engineered for predation on a galactic scale. Its biology was as advanced as its technology, with redundant organs, adaptive immune systems, and neural structures that operated on principles human science was only beginning to understand. Communication proved impossible through conventional means, but Dr. Martinez, a neurolinguist from Barcelona, proposed a radical solution. If the stalkers communicated through bioelectric fields, humanity could attempt to interface with those same fields using modified computer systems. The risk was enormous, but the potential intelligence value was incalculable. The breakthrough came when Martinez successfully established a limited data link with the captured stalker's neural network. What she discovered changed everything. Vexhai's memories contained detailed information about stalker society, their hunting methods, and most crucially, the locations of other human settlements that had been taken for the grand hunt. Thousands of humans were being held on artificial worlds constructed specifically for hunting. These planets were carefully designed ecosystems where stalkers could pursue their prey through varied terrains while monitoring their every move. The hunts were elaborate affairs, sometimes lasting for years, with the most skilled humans being preserved for special ceremonies honoring the greatest stalker hunters. General Rodriguez immediately began planning rescue operations, but the challenges seemed insurmountable. The prison worlds were located in deep space, defended by stalker fleets, and accessible only through faster-than-light travel technology that humanity didn't possess. Traditional military thinking suggested the missions were impossible, but humanity was no longer thinking traditionally. The Global Defense Initiative had evolved into something unprecedented in human history. A truly unified species working toward a common goal. Engineers in Tokyo were collaborating with physicists in Sao Paulo to reverse engineer stalker propulsion systems. Military strategists in Washington were coordinating with guerrilla warfare experts from every continent to develop tactics for fighting in alien environments. The first prototype human spacecraft capable of faster-than-light travel was designated Project Prometheus. Built in a massive underground facility in the Australian outback, it incorporated stalker technology with human engineering principles. The fusion wasn't perfect, but it was functional enough for humanity's purposes. More importantly, it was completely invisible to stalker detection systems because it used modified versions of their own cloaking technology. Captain Maria Santos, formerly of the Brazilian Air Force, was chosen to command the first rescue mission. Her crew represented the best of humanity, specialists from dozens of nations working together with a precision that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. They launched on a Tuesday morning, their destination a prison world designated as Hunting Ground 7 by the stalkers. The mission almost failed before it began. Stalker patrol ships detected quantum disturbances from Prometheus's experimental drive system, but the signatures didn't match any known human technology. The patrols investigated briefly, then dismissed the readings as natural phenomena. Humanity's first interstellar vessel slipped past the galaxy's most advanced detection networks, using the enemy's own blind spots against them. Hunting Ground 7 was a nightmare made manifest. The artificial world had been constructed to provide maximum sport for stalker hunters, with diverse biomes ranging from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. Thousands of humans from the early abductions were scattered across the planet's surface, some in primitive shelters, others living like animals after months or years of constant predation. Captain Santos and her team made contact with the survivors using quantum communication devices that couldn't be detected by stalker monitoring systems. What they found was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Despite everything they had endured, the humans on the hunting ground had organized themselves into communities, sharing resources and protecting the weak. They had developed new survival techniques, created makeshift weapons, and established communication networks that spanned the entire planet. More importantly, they had been studying their captors. Years of being hunted had taught them to recognize stalker movement patterns, predict their tactics, and exploit their weaknesses. The survivors had become experts on stalker psychology in ways that even Dr. Martinez's neural interface couldn't match. The rescue mission became something entirely different. A coordinated uprising across the entire planet. Using equipment smuggled down from Prometheus, the survivors began hitting stalker hunting parties with guerrilla tactics that turned their own hunting grounds against them. Knowledge of the terrain, combined with human weapons and stalker technology, created a combination the aliens had never encountered. The stalkers responded as predators always did when faced with unexpected resistance. They escalated. Elite hunting units were deployed to the planet, equipped with the most advanced weapons in their arsenal. But humanity had changed the rules of engagement. This wasn't a hunt anymore. It was a war. The turning point came when the survivors managed to capture a stalker communication hub. Dr. Chen, monitoring from Earth, realized they could use the hub to access the stalker fleet's command network. In a feat of computer programming that required understanding alien technology beyond anything previously attempted, human technicians managed to upload a virus into the stalker systems. The virus was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to destroy stalker technology, it simply reversed key functions at critical moments. Cloaking systems would activate when they should have deactivated, gravity nets would repel instead of attract, and navigation systems would provide false coordinates. The effect spread through the stalker fleet like wildfire. Commander Vexhai, still held in the Swiss facility, experienced something no stalker had felt in millennia. Fear. Through the neural link, Dr. Martinez could sense the aliens' growing horror as reports arrived from across the galaxy. Hunting parties were disappearing. Fleet communications were failing. Most impossibly, prey species were beginning to fight back with stalker weapons and tactics. The war's end came not with a massive battle, but with a simple realization. The Void Stalkers had defined themselves entirely through their role as predators. When that role was challenged, when they became the hunted instead of the hunters, their entire civilization began to collapse. Ships fled to the deep void between galaxies. Hunting grounds were abandoned. The greatest predator species in galactic history simply faded away, unable to adapt to a universe where they were no longer apex hunters. Humanity emerged from the conflict fundamentally changed. The Global Defense Initiative evolved into the Human Stellar Alliance, representing not individual nations but the species as a whole. Earth became the center of a growing interstellar civilization, built on principles of cooperation and mutual defense. Other species, freed from stalker predation, began making contact with these remarkable humans who had accomplished the impossible. Dr. Sarah Chen, now elderly but still working, often reflected on humanity's greatest victory. It hadn't been superior technology or military might that defeated the stalkers. It had been humanity's ability to adapt, to learn, and most importantly, to work together when survival was at stake. The prey had become the predator not through strength alone, but through the one thing the stalkers had never learned to value: unity. The galaxy would never be the same. And in the deep void between stars, the few remaining stalkers whispered warnings.